AfriForum is fed up with South Africa's unreliable electricity supply, so much so that it's developing plans to start its own power generation company, but it's also involved in a matter with Eskom over divulging details of active contracts and those doing any kind of business with a power utility. Let's speak to AfriForum spokesperson Jacques Broodryk about this. Jacques, good morning and thank you very much for your time. So it's called Project AfriEnergy. We understand it comprises of short, medium and long-term plans to the country's power problems. Unpack this project for us.
Well, good morning and good morning to your viewers. Well, yes, this is obviously a plan that that's been in the making for quite some time. And we will be announcing more details regarding our short-term, medium-term and long-term solutions to power supply in South Africa very shortly.
But what we do know, at least what we've seen in the media space, is that among the short term would be tackling the NERSA matter, medium term would be dealing with the independence of municipalities or communities from municipalities, and then you've got the final one, which is nuclear. Just can you give us a bit more detail about this? Because it's got a lot of South Africans excited about the future, that now beyond challenging Eskom, there seems to be some sort of a solution coming from different quarters of society.
Sure. So I can give a little bit of detail about that. We are looking at medium-term solutions would be to roll out solar options on a very large scale in South Africa, and also to look at ways of creative ways of organizing the financing around the solar problem, because we do know a lot of people simply aren't in a financial position to actually either qualify for credit to get a loan to install solar, or don't have the cash funds to install solar. So that's one model. Various models that we will be looking at, and then of course in the long-term solutions we're looking at pebble bed generators, pebble bed nuclear power generators, which is a new form of technology which is very efficient and also very safe, and that can be rolled out on a large scale in a small format and deliver power directly to municipalities and towns.
When we look at this pebble bed, there are those analysts that have already pointed out that development of modular reactor is quite expensive. How would you offset this? Are you looking to approach investors? How would it work?
Yeah, it is very expensive, but it's also worthwhile the expense in the long term. So we will be looking at connecting those who want to invest in such projects with those who are actually going to be rolling it out on the ground, and that'll be AfriForum's main role. We'll be playing that facilitation and inviting investors and connecting them with the developers.
All right. So it's more of an intermediary, or as you say, you guys will be a facilitator in this process, where we've got those that are investing and those that want to run the businesses. Then on the NERSA aspect of things, your legal bid, it might be moot if we are to go by just what we heard yesterday from the president, that he has advised Eskom to hold off a bit on that increase. What do you plan to do with that information? Would you still want to go to court to at least be granted orders? Because there's not a lot of certainty.
I think you just summed it up perfectly. There is a big lack of certainty, and I think that's the thing that is keeping a lot of South Africans very nervous and on the edge of their seats at this stage. Eskom wants to increase power supply that they can't even provide, and people have really been taking the brunt of this. But businesses are really getting knocked by this constant load shedding. The expense on diesel is extremely high, and on top of that, now Eskom wants to push through with this tax, this increase in pricing. It's pretty ridiculous, and we'll wait to see what the court action holds in state for us, but it's definitely not something that we're just going to let go. We think that Eskom, and by being that larger part, the government as well, should really start reading the room, because South Africans are fed up. If things continue the way that it's continuing, with this lack of service delivery and constant increase in prices, we are going to see larger civil unrest than we are experiencing at the moment. It's already started to increase again, and we're really heading in a dangerous direction if government does not pull its act together immediately.
I want to take you back to some of your medium-term goals, the independence, or trying to assist communities to become independent of Eskom or municipalities. Talk to us about the success of the Mafube local municipality, because that is one very critical test case, what we've seen happening there in Frankfurt.
Yeah, Frankfurt is not my speciality. It's not something that I can go into detail on too much, but I can tell you that this is one of the approaches that AfriForum has been pushing for a number of years, to get communities more independent, because we see the situation repeating itself all over the country, where you have ratepayers and taxpayers who play their parts, who pay their municipal bills, and then you have a municipality who simply just mismanages those funds and doesn't pay Eskom. And then you get a situation where Eskom wants to cut off power to the ratepayers, who didn't do anything wrong in this place, in the first place. So, and that's happening with electricity supply, it's happening with water supply, it's happening with sewage works, it's happening with roads. So there's a massive decay spreading throughout the country under especially ANC-run governments and municipalities. And this is something that needs to be addressed. And the only way to address that is for communities, the people who are actually have a stake in looking after the municipalities, who have a stake in operations functionally well. Let those peoples have a hand in actually managing those services to ensure that it does happen fluently, because we see that politicians simply do not care about it.
So allowing people to actually decide on their own futures. Then talk to us about your legal bid to have Eskom furnish you with details over their supplier contracts. You say they redacted key information because this is a court case from last year already. Where does it stand now?
This is a very interesting matter, and I think it really just lifts the mirror a bit and shines some light on how dubious some of these actions are. We sent through a Public Access to Information Act request to Eskom, and we asked them for information about all of their ongoing and active contracts regarding the purchasing of and transport of diesel and coal. Because we've, a lot of whistleblowers approach AfriForum with information about certain things. So we had received tip-offs that there had been a lot of corruption going on with many of these contracts. But obviously, in order to do something about that, you need the proof. So we sent through the request to Eskom, and they did respond to us. They sent us through the details, but an extremely heavily redacted document. All of the key elements were simply blacked out. This includes the amounts that they are paying, the schedules at which these payments are made, the people who represented AfriForum and, who represented Eskom and the suppliers during these contract negotiations. Their names have been blacked out. Things like the length of the contract period, that has been blacked out. So definitely not playing open cards here, and one can only imagine why on earth Eskom would want to hide information like that from the public.
Especially the length of a contract, the duration of it. If it's 20 years, let it be known, 50, let it be known, or even if it's just 5 years. So that's rather interesting. So where to from here now? You're going back to court. You want all the documents.
Yes, we've now approached the courts for a court order to force Eskom to supply us with the unredacted documents so that we and the public can see where that money is going to. And if Eskom will now have to make their own legal decisions and see whether they're going to challenge that court order in court or whether they'll supply us with the documents, that still remains to be seen. But definitely something fishy happening here with Eskom not playing open cards.
At the very least, one would say it shouldn't be privileged information. If you're doing business with the state, I mean, that is a state-owned entity, so it's taxpayers' money. We would need more transparency at any given point. But Jacques, thank you very much for that update. That was AfriForum spokesperson Jacques Broodryk.